Okay, camera's adjusted. So we'll go into twisting the feet now. So as we go into our short stance point both feet 45 degrees to the front. So you don't want to be short stance square, you want to be on a 45-degree angle. Whenever you execute the hips without shifting the feet, it will just be the power of the leg that fires the hips in. You can sink slightly as well. But when you're twisting the feet, you've got to make sure that both feet twist. However you're going to do it. Now, it's going to be difficult for me to twist this direction, because that's going to knock me off balance. But I want to make sure that if I'm blocking this way, feet don't have to move. Same for the punch, the feet don't have to move. Depending on the exercise that I'm doing, we can turn and block, and then twist back in for the punch. This happens in example of the sepai, where you come around 1, 2, 3. So you fire the hip, back fist, and then fire the hip again in a slow motion. So you've got to make sure that the feet twist. Sometimes you're only going to use, from a feet twisting point of view, sometimes you're only going to move one foot, and that might be the back foot. So if we step and then execute here, you'll see that the hip fires in as the heel comes off the floor now. So even though it's kind of a very detailed thing of the hips really, so even though it's only this part of the body that you're using, it really is a detailed kind of thing of how to maneuver the hip. So as we execute that with the heel off the floor now, as you can see, that twisting of the foot will power the hip in and let us drop a little bit more into the stance. So from this position we can have this. Another way to use the hips in like Hangetsu would be with the front foot. Now we don't do Hangetsu in Tadashi, but what Hangetsu does is from this position here, it would be heel in. And notice that always bringing the, for the most part, when we're using the front foot, we're bringing the heel in. Other one, we can push the heel out. So as we use the hip now, we bring the heel in, but we've also got to remember to use the back leg as well, to use that from this position. If we just use this, nothing happens with the hips. But we've got to power the leg. We use the leg muscle to push it through. So that can be for Hangetsu, and just another way of using parts of the body. So again, hips are used in different stances, in different ways, different transitions. Your hips are going to be used and powered by different parts. One general rule I like to work from is it's the back leg that will power the hip. So if you work on that from a most part, the back leg, whenever you're in stance, that will power the hip. Here, both legs power the hips because you're in parallel stance. But here, the back leg is going to be the one that powers the hips forwards, if that makes sense. If you're in, for example, Zenkutsu-dachi, so we're going to a loose, I'll do it loose so you can see, loose Zenkutsu-dachi. Rather than have the hip pivot around on this angle here, have the hip pivot on this angle. So it's coming up and down, if that makes sense. Not around, but more down. What you'll find that will do is that will also strengthen your stance as well. It does pull a bit, yes. The one thing to avoid when using the hips in Zenkutsu-dachi is whenever you're pulling the hip off, avoid the front knee. Whenever you're pushing the hip, avoid the collapse in here. So your goal is to have this as still as humanly possible. Okay, it takes practice. Minus the wobbles a little bit, so that you can allow a little bit of wobble. Just avoid this. For example, if you're blocking, just avoid that front knee collapsing in. Your goal is when you're blocking is to push this out as you're pulling the hip back. So you're actually opening the hips, opening the legs up, pulling the hip to the right as I am now, and pushing the knee to the left. And then from that position, you can obviously come in with your Chudanzuki, Jodanzuki, whatever the next technique is that you're going to be using your hips for. Other stances will work the hips in different ways. Sometimes you roll the hips forwards. Now when I say roll the hips forwards, I don't mean you roll the hips forwards. That's silly. So if you sat laughing right now, then The idea is that, for example, Shikoda sumo stance, not to push the hip back or to go side to side, but to, from this position, slight shift. Slight shift, it's very, very small. You can't see the shift too much, I don't think, but it's to roll the hip this direction, forwards. That'll help by pushing the knees apart, that'll help with pushing the knees apart as well. Whenever you are transitioning, sticking with sumo stance, depending on where you're going, again, you're going to use I use the move from Seon Chin as an example. You're going to use the back foot. Whatever is the back foot when you've finished, that's going to be the one that fires the hip. So the one thing I don't want to do when I'm doing this, for example, is shift and then move. I want to keep this still and then shift at the last second. That's going to help me generate that power in the hips as well. So we've covered the Haikadech. Fairly simple. Again, just think circular motion, but not with the whole body. Don't think circular with the whole body. Just think circular with the hips. So try and keep the shoulders as solid as you possibly can. We've covered short stance, heel off the floor, heel on the floor. We've covered twisting, and that can work in. The twisting can also work in. They use the Tadashi version of Basai Dai, where we go from here. There's one lot of hips. Now again, it's going to be generated from the feet. So you've got to think, what powers the hips? The legs. What powers the legs? The feet. What powers the feet? The mind. Now, if we can see you've got hips and you've got legs and you've got feet, there's something not happening along the way, isn't there? So when we step out, for example, in Basai Dai, we go here. Notice that I haven't turned this stepping foot off. I've kept this stepping foot this direction, because the human tendency when you want to change direction is to move the foot in that direction. But look what's happened to the hips now. Look where they've gone. What I want to try and do is keep these feet pointing forwards, land, and then fire the hip in. Then I can obviously move on to the next one. Keep the foot pointing forwards, then land the hip in, if that makes sense. So just try it. You'll notice that whenever you want to change direction, you'll point your foot in that direction. I don't want you to do that. I want you to move away from human tendencies to do that. So stepping out, keep the hips, keep the feet pointing in that direction they are now, and then twist. Same goes for things like Tegiyaku Shodan, Tegiyaku Nidan. If I use those as an example now, you focus on where the feet are at this point. I'm not saying to get some kind of foot fetish or anything, but just look down at the feet. I won't zoom in, because I can't. But notice that when I step out to block, as I've twisted this foot now, the hips have also twisted. And you can see where the knot of the belt is facing. So your goal is to just, instead of stepping away, sideways on view would be this. I've got width in my stance, I've got a little bit of length in my stance, but my hips are being used. Is to step back. Now remember, you've got to keep this foot pointing. Foot. And then from that position you can prepare and then fire the hip in. Okay? So the same goes for Nidan. Step in and prepare, fire the hip in. It doesn't matter if it's Zenkutsu Sadachi or Haiko hand Zenkutsu Sadachi. All you would do is adjust. So if you're going into hand Zenkutsu Sadachi, you just simply step back. Simply step back. If you're going into Zenkutsu Sadachi, you're going to step out that little bit further so you can have the length and the width when you've twisted. Okay? So that's just some basic stuff for you to practice with executing the hips. It is a circular motion. It's not this. I have seen a lot of people when they're doing things like Sansaru, and they move. I'll show you the sideways on version. They kind of go from here and then pull this right up, and I don't know what reaction I'm getting right now, but they pull this right up, and there's no need for that. All you basically have to do with that is strengthen this back leg. I'll do it this way so you can see. So rather than it be this, just have it this. So you fire the hip by just strengthening that back leg. Okay, tensing your butt cheek basically. So there's some exercise you can use for your hips. You don't have to be flexible to use hips. My flexibility is null and void, but certainly there still has to be that hip twist. And the way I can tell that you're using the hips, or any instructor will probably tell the way you're using your hips, is because the belt moves and what I call the skirt flies up. Okay? So that's your goal when you are training, is to try and generate more hip in what you're doing. Rewind it, play it back. I'll try and do some more on hips. I don't know if I've explained a lot in katas, but I'll try to do some more on hips. So we'll call this hip exercise number 1. And again, there are other ways of using the hip. So I'll try to video those at some point. Okay, I'm just literally waiting for a class. That's why I'm in a gi. So I'll until next time. I'll see you soon. Hope you get something, and hope you can start to generate that hip technique. All right, I'll see you in a bit.